Sarah and her friends decided to take a weekend trip to a remote cabin in the heart of Yellowstone National Park. It was supposed to be a relaxing getaway, a break from their busy lives. The first night, they gathered around a campfire, roasting marshmallows and sharing stories. As the fire crackled, the forest around them seemed to grow darker, the trees closing in like silent sentinels. As the night wore on, Sarah felt a growing unease. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The others laughed off her concerns, blaming it on the spooky atmosphere and too many ghost stories. But when she went to fetch more firewood, she heard a rustling in the bushes nearby. She froze, listening intently. There it was again, the sound of something moving just beyond the firelight. "Guys, did you hear that?" Sarah called out, her voice trembling. Her friends looked at her with raised eyebrows. "Hear what?" Jake asked, his tone dismissive. "There's something out there," Sarah insisted. They all listened, but the forest was silent again. After a few minutes, they shrugged it off and returned to their conversation. Sarah tried to relax, but she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Finally, unable to stand it any longer, she decided to head to bed early. In the middle of the night, Sarah woke up to the sound of scratching at the cabin door. Her heart raced as she reached for her flashlight. She shone the beam towards the door but saw nothing. The scratching continued, growing more insistent. Summoning her courage, she crept towards the door and opened it a crack. There was nothing there. Sarah closed the door and backed away, feeling a chill run down her spine. She turned to head back to bed and froze. In the dim light of her flashlight, she saw a figure standing by the window, watching her. It was tall and thin, its eyes glowing in the dark. She screamed, waking up her friends. They rushed into the room and Sarah pointed to the window. But when they looked, there was nothing there. "You must have been dreaming," Jake said, trying to reassure her. "Let's all just go back to sleep." But Sarah knew she hadn't imagined it. She spent the rest of the night wide awake, listening for any sound, any sign that the figure had returned. When morning finally came, she felt a wave of relief. The group decided to cut their trip short and head back home. As they packed up the car, Sarah glanced back at the cabin one last time. There, standing at the edge of the forest, was the figure, watching them leave. She never spoke of it again, but she knew she would never return to that cabin in Yellowstone. Some things in the woods were better left undiscovered. Elkmont in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park was once a bustling logging town, but now it stood as a ghost town, abandoned and eerie. Mark and Lisa, avid hikers and history buffs, were excited to explore the remnants of this forgotten place. They arrived in the late afternoon, the sun casting long shadows over the dilapidated buildings. As they wandered through the old houses, Mark felt a strange sensation, as if they were being watched. Lisa was fascinated by the decay, snapping photos of the crumbling walls and broken windows. They found an old hotel, its front porch sagging with age. Despite its state, they decided to explore inside. The air inside was musty, filled with the scent of mold and rot. They walked through the lobby, past the dusty reception desk, and into the ballroom. Mark shivered. The temperature seemed to drop drastically. "Do you feel that?" he asked, rubbing his arms. Lisa nodded, her breath visible in the cold air. "This place is definitely creepy," she admitted. They continued exploring, finding old furniture covered in white sheets like specters frozen in time. In one of the rooms, Lisa found a diary. She opened it and read aloud, "March 15th, 1932. The spirits are restless tonight. I can hear their whispers, feel their presence. They do not want us here." Mark laughed nervously. Someone had an overactive imagination. But as they continued reading, the entries grew more disturbing. The writer spoke of seeing apparitions, hearing disembodied voices, and feeling cold hands on their skin. The last entry was dated just before the town was abandoned. "We should go," Mark said, his voice shaky. Lisa agreed, and they made their way back to the lobby. But as they reached the front door, it slammed shut. They tried to open it, but it was stuck fast. Panic set in as they realized they were trapped. Suddenly, they heard footsteps behind them. Turning around, they saw the faint outline of a figure standing in the shadows. The figure began to move towards them, its form becoming more solid with each step. They could see its eyes, hollow and dark, staring at them with a malevolent gaze. Lisa screamed, and they both bolted for the back door. They stumbled through the dark hallways, the figure's footsteps echoing behind them. They found a window and managed to pry it open. scrambling out into the night. They ran back to their car, not daring to look back. As they drove away, they could still feel the figure's gaze on them, watching them leave. Mark and Lisa never returned to Elkmont. The ghost town remained a place of mystery and terror, a reminder that some places are haunted by more than just memories. Zion National Park was known for its breathtaking landscapes and challenging trails. Alex and his friends were experienced hikers, and they were excited to tackle the Angel's Landing Trail. It was a difficult hike, but the views from the top were worth it. They started early in the morning, the sun just beginning to rise. The trail was steep and narrow with sharp drop-offs on either side. As they ascended, they marveled at the beauty around them. But as they reached the halfway point, something strange happened. The trail ahead seemed to vanish. "Did we take a wrong turn?" Emily asked, looking around in confusion. "No, this is the right way," Alex said, checking the map. "The trail should continue straight ahead." But where the trail should have been, there was nothing but a sheer cliff. They looked around, trying to find another path, but there was none. It was as if the trail had been erased. "This is weird," Jake said, his voice tinged with fear. "We should go back." They turned to head back down, but the trail behind them had also disappeared. They were surrounded by cliffs on all sides, with no way to continue. Panic set in as they realized they were trapped. They tried to climb down the cliffs, but the rock was too loose and dangerous. They shouted for help, hoping someone would hear them, but the park was eerily silent. As the sun set, the temperature dropped and they huddled together for warmth. The darkness seemed to close in around them, and they could hear strange noises echoing through the canyon. It sounded like whispers, but they couldn't make out the words. "We need to stay calm," Alex said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Someone will find us." But deep down he wasn't sure. The whispers grew louder, and they could see shadows moving in the darkness. The shadows seemed to take on a life of their own, twisting and writhing like smoke. "Do you see that?" Emily whispered, pointing to a shadow that was moving towards them. They watched in horror as the shadow grew larger, taking on the shape of a person. The figure stopped a few feet away from them, its eyes glowing in the dark. "Who are you?" Alex asked, his voice trembling. The figure didn't respond. It just stood there, watching them with its eerie gaze. The whispers grew louder, filling their ears with a cacophony of voices. "Go away!" Jake shouted, throwing a rock at the figure. The rock passed through the figure as if it were made of smoke. The figure began to move closer, its eyes never leaving them. They backed away, but there was nowhere to go. Just when they thought they couldn't take it anymore, the figure stopped and vanished, leaving behind a chill in the air. The whispers faded, and the darkness seemed to lift. The next morning they were found by a park ranger. They were dehydrated and scared, but otherwise unharmed. They never spoke of what happened that night, but they knew they had encountered something beyond their understanding. They left Zion National Park, vowing never to return. The vanishing trail remained a mystery, a reminder that some places are not meant to be explored. Mammoth Cave National Park is home to the world's longest cave system. Its vast network of tunnels and chambers has fascinated explorers for centuries. Among them were Tom and Rachel, experienced spelunkers eager to discover new passages. They joined a guided tour to explore the deeper parts of the cave. Their guide, an old park ranger named Bill, warned them about the dangers of venturing off the marked paths. But Tom and Rachel were confident in their skills and decided to explore on their own after the tour. They waited until the group moved on and then slipped away, heading into an unmarked tunnel. The air grew colder as they descended deeper into the cave. Their flashlights cast eerie shadows on the walls, and the sound of dripping water echoed around them. "This is incredible," Tom whispered, his voice reverberating in the narrow passage. Rachel nodded, her excitement tinged with a hint of fear. "Let's keep going. There might be something amazing up ahead." They continued exploring, but soon they realized they were lost. The tunnels all looked the same, and they couldn't find their way back. Panic set in as they wandered through the darkness, their flashlights flickering. "Tom, I think we should go back," Rachel said, her voice shaking. "I don't know which way is back," Tom admitted, his face pale. They tried to retrace their steps, but the cave seemed to twist and turn in impossible ways. They were trapped deep underground with no way out. As they sat down to rest, they heard a strange noise. It sounded like chanting, but in a language they couldn't understand. They followed the sound, hoping it might lead to an exit. The chanting grew louder as they approached a large chamber. In the center of the chamber was a stone altar covered in strange symbols. Around the altar were figures in hooded robes, their faces hidden in the shadows. Tom and Rachel watched in horror as the figures performed a ritual, chanting in their strange language. Suddenly the figures turned towards them, their eyes glowing in the dark. "Who are you?" one of the figures demanded, their voice echoing through the chamber. "We're lost," Tom stammered. "We just want to get out of here." The figures looked at each other, then back at Tom and Rachel. "You have trespassed on sacred ground," the figure said. "You must pay the price." The figures began to chant again, and the air grew thick with an oppressive energy. Tom and Rachel felt their bodies grow heavy, their limbs paralyzed. "You will never leave this place," the figure said, their voice cold and final. Tom and Rachel screamed, but no sound came out. The darkness closed in around them, and they felt their consciousness slipping away. When they woke up, they were back at the entrance of the cave, their memories of the night before hazy. They stumbled out into the daylight, their bodies weak and trembling. They never spoke of what happened in the cave, but they knew they had encountered something beyond their understanding. The curse of the cave remained a mystery, a dark secret hidden deep within the earth.